Got 20 seconds. Come on, Amanda, go.
Keep moving. Good. Get those knees up. Explode. Good. Explode. Let's go. Up.
Drive forward. Let's go. One more. Go.
This is the Fight Strength Podcast, NSFW, presented by Breaking Muscle.
Hello and welcome back, my fighting and fitness fans, for an all-new episode of Breaking Muscle presents Fight Strength NSFW. I am Jason Burgos, senior editor for MMAsucker.com, and with me is my compadre in podcasting, the strength and conditioning star of American Top Team and globe-trotting future model, the one and only Phil Daru. Phil, what is going on this week?
What's going on, brother? I'm good. I feel good today. I feel good. I'm almost ready to make my transition and fly about 15 to 16 hours to Russia. So we'll see how that goes. Florida guy going to Russia in the cold weather, but it's the first time I've been under 30 degrees. So we'll see how that goes. But other than that, I'm feeling good.
Like, are you prepared for, Russia has some issues right now with, the U.S. Is there any, if like someone goes, Mr. Daru, tell your president, we did not interfere. Are you going to be like, oh, yes, I totally agree. I understand.
Is that your Russian? Stop. Is that your Russian accent?
That's my Russian. I had to bring it out for you. I know you like it.
That don't sound good at all.
Come on, Mr. Daru, you love Mother Russia. Please tell me.
It's sounding like you're German, bro. What are you doing?
They're close, though.
Okay.
They're right near the border.
I am very close with my Russian comrades. And let me tell you something. I think I'll be fine. But if I don't return, I'm going to send you a text and tell you to please help me. But if not, I'm good. Honestly, I am excited, though. I am excited to go to their country. It's a beautiful country, and I'm really looking forward to working with the killers that they have out there. All the Russians are true athletes, true fighters. So it's gonna be a good experience, and I'm excited. Should
we have a safe word, like you text me Black Hawk down, and I know, okay, I gotta call the FBI?
Yeah, something like that.
Now, for fans of the show, that is a bit of a different opening than the usual, and that is because we now have a working relationship with a very popular fitness website, Breaking Muscle. So upcoming episodes with strength training experts will be special editions for this site. We are pumped about this opportunity, and just grateful to the folks at Breaking Muscle for working with us. Or for those people unaware of what NSFW means, it's an acronym for Not Safe for Work, because we like to get a little explicit on the show. Just letting you a heads up. But again, big thank you to Breaking Muscle, and I hope all you fans of Breaking Muscle listening to our product are excited and interested in what we can offer with this training expert like Phil Daru. Now, on our show this week, our guest is an example of the men and women bringing new technologies into the world of MMA and fitness training, and that is the very busy and longtime friend of Phil's, Nicholas Davenport. Now, of course, if you enjoy our interview with Nicholas today, you can also always check out all our previous episodes with other experts in the field of strength training and conditioning, like Dr. Corey Peacock, working out of Florida 2, who used to be at Black Zillions, now at Hard Knocks 3360, Zach Evanesh, legendary Northeast wrestling coach, Dr. Andy Galpin, PJ Nessler, Cameron Josh, the understudy, to Joe DeFranco, or Dan Gardner. Then find our pages on iTunes, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, Google Play Music, and on YouTube, amongst other streaming services. You guys can go check out those previous episodes. Tons of knowledge bombs on fitness and strength training and all kinds of things, just the sports science. Now, Phil, tell us a little bit about how you know our guest for today, Nicholas Davenport.
It's funny. Me and Nick used to play high school football together. We went to the same high school. We're from the same neighborhood. Nick, basically, all throughout high school, he was a brain. Like, he had straight A's, 4.0, like crazy GPA. He would help us with all of our math homework and things like that because, to be honest, most of us wanted to just play football. So for him, I could see him going into this field of sports psychology and furthering his knowledge. And now he's a professor at Broward College. He has his master's in sports psychology, and he's a thinker, man. So, like, bringing him in, especially for Dustin's camp, and this is something that me and Dustin were thinking about doing and bringing in because, Poirier is somebody who's been in the game for a long time. He has the physicality. Obviously, he's tough as shit. He knows what he needs to do from that aspect. But bringing in another way to get him to progress as a fighter. This is something that was truly missing in his game, and bringing on Nick. And I know just from him, just knowing him, he's going to bring something special to the table. So it was good. And I'm glad we have him on the podcast.
And for the folks that fans of Breaking Muscle that are listening to our show for the first time, I mean, Phil Daru works with some of the best fighters in the world at American Top Team. Ioane and Jacek, Dustin Poirier, as you mentioned, King Mo, Colby Covington, Alexei Olenek. I mean, these are some of the best fighters in the world. He's even worked with Tyron Woodley, another champion. I mean, so Phil has an expert knowledge. So if he's bringing in a guy like Nicholas Davenport to a organized, big-time brand in American Top Team, this just shows you how serious and legit this technology is, and it's really cutting edge. But on our show every week, we have the traditional Ask the Roost segment. We have some really good questions for Phil, so you can, showcase his knowledge on fitness and strength training. First question comes from Marcus Aurelio Sturpa. He asks and says, "Hi, Phil. I recently got to see your content and love it. I'm a PT working mainly with general populations and physique athletes, but I got 2 friends asking me for training program to improve their Thai boxing. Do you have any suggestions about how to start with them? I've read an article on GCP where you suggest starting with a hypertrophy block with some low-impact plyometrics to the transition into a strength phase. Now, my main doubts are, as he lists, and we're going to take it one by one here. His first main doubt for you is exercise selection for strength. He says, you suggested, for instance, glute bridge floor press. I would have never thought about that. Could you briefly explain your thoughts process behind choosing exercises during this phase?"
So what a glute bridge floor press is something that's going to make sure that we're getting good joint centration. So we're making sure we're stabilizing one particular joint and we're moving the other in a dynamic fashion. Same thing that you would be doing in a fight sequence. Because of the fact that MMA is so, it's not linear, right? We have a lot of things going on at once. So for them to be strong in uncomfortable situations, that is something that I would predict, or I would state that is a sports-specific movement. We're not talking about throwing punches with dumbbells. We're not talking about weighted kicks. I'm talking about getting in a position, an uncomfortable position, but a stabilizing position, and also having to move freely with the outer limbs. So we're talking about proximal stability with distal mobility. And that's what I always harp on in any type of all of my exercises, including my corrective exercises as well.
Now, his second question or doubt is, when it comes to hypertrophy, what are the muscles that you would put more volume on?
It really just depends on the individual. Now, if you have, if it's the same as a bodybuilder almost, in a sense, not to say that we're trying to do bodybuilding movements with them and make them a bodybuilder, but we want to build a full body of armor. So if a hamstring is overpowering a quad, we want to bring up the quads. If let's say if your chest is so big that you have no back at all, we're going to do a lot of posterior chain work. So we're just trying to build up the body and tissue strength to actually withstand a full camp. It's not so much to build massive amounts of muscle here in hypertrophy, but it's more about, joint integrity and getting them ready to withstand load throughout the entire camp and take blows that they're going to be taking, because it's a physical sport. You have to be ready and able. Your body has to be capable of taking on those impacts.
Now, the second question is from me. Now, we talked a bit about this when as you mentioned last week on the show with Stitch Duran, that when you were here in New York for UFC 217, you have been using a fasting diet for a good bit now, and it's gotten you a lot of success. Could you explain the eating plan you are on and how it differs to other diets, and how it has been beneficial to you?
I don't even like to call it really a diet, and it's not something that you would it's not a fad diet. It's not something that you do for a certain specific amount of time. It's kind of a lifestyle change, and what you would preferably say it's something that we've been doing since the Paleolithic era back in the day. Now, let me start off by saying I'm not a dietitian. I'm definitely not a doctor, but what I've done and what I've got accomplished through this means it's actually helped me out, and I've been implementing this in with my clients as well. But I've been using a form of intermittent fasting called time restricted eating. Now, this basically means I fast for a certain amount of time and then eat in a window that coordinates with my circadian rhythms. Now, I was listening to a Rogan podcast, and it was with Dr. Rhonda Patrick. She's phenomenal. She's a wealth of knowledge. So if you ever want to get anything from the biomolecular standpoint, and just go ahead and check out anything with Rhonda Patrick. But she was talking about time-restricted eating to enhance her sleep quality and digestion, along with losing, let's say, body fat. Right. So I found it interesting, and I started doing my research. I came across a professor by the name of Sachin Panda at the Salk Institute in Torrey Pines, California, who works on circadian clock methods of optimization and efficiency. He ran a study with mice and found that they eat 12 hours out of the day, or I should say out of the night, because they're nocturnal creatures. So they eat 12 hours and then they fasted for 12. What was uncovered was that they were noticeably slimmer than those who ate past that window in time. So if you ate about 15 hours, and that's primarily what a lot of human beings are doing now, is they're eating, within 15, 16, sometimes even 20 hours. And, basically you're putting your body in a high state of cortisol, and it's not allowing the body to actually calm down and get in that digest mode. You're constantly having to digest and not, fend for food. So it's just putting havoc and a lot of stress on the body. Now, this was to be true with the humans. It could bring the obesity epidemic to a staggering halt, leading into less all-cause mortality in the U.S. and a greater quality of life if we understand these processes. So he performed this study, right, on 3 groups of mice. First group ate a high-fat, high-sugar diet in a window of about 12 hours. Then they fasted for 12. The other group ate a balanced diet, just regular nutrient-dense diet with high amounts of nutrients around the clock for every 2 to 3 hours, just kind of like a standard what we've been told to do for a long time. Now, group 3 ate a calorie-dense, calorically dense nutritional diet and kept it within a 12-hour window. Now, all 3 groups consumed their food in a 12-hour window or all 2 groups that consumed their food in a 12-hour window lost body fat. And then the second group maintained body weight and had trouble sleeping. So that was the group that ate every 2 to 3 hours. The third group actually lost body fat, gained lean muscle, and improved sleep quality tremendously by about 65%. That's a big number. In essence, we are working off what are genetically predisposed to waking up, having to hunt and gather our food. So back in the day when we woke up, we didn't have food readily available right there. We didn't just get up and eat. We had to fend. We had to go and hunt for our food. So we had that fight or flight response and putting ourselves into that high sympathetic state. Once we consume food, our bodies tend to get weaker, stopping that rate of fat burning. So every time you consume food, your body is actually utilizing that food for fuel and not your body fat. So that's how the fat burning process actually begins to stop. If you're constantly consuming food, then you're constantly in a state of digestion, and your body is working towards that instead of burning fat for fuel, which we know, right? Studies have shown that you can go days and sometimes even weeks without losing any muscle tissue because your body is producing growth hormone. Every time you're fasting, you're producing more and more growth hormone. Your body is smart, so it's going to go and get the source that's readily available. Body fat before protein, unless you're like 2% body fat, you have some body fat to spare for fuel. They did another study finding that when someone fasts for at least 16 hours and eats in an 8-hour window, it can increase overall endurance and adherence to the fasting. So if you're an athlete, especially an endurance athlete or a combat sports athlete, eating in that 8-hour window is actually going to enhance endurance. Now, they don't know exactly what happened or what the mechanism behind that was, but they know that it's been working. They found that out in that study. And you know what? I'm trying it out now. And to be honest, I've been doing a 16-8, and I hit 2 PRs in this past microcycle that I've been working. And they were rep PRs. So they're repetition PRs, which means basically I did more reps with more weight than I've ever done before.
Wow.
And this is without having any carbs in my system. So there was no glycogen in there. My lactic capacity was still high, and I still had fuel to carry me through my workouts.
Keep going.
So for me, I want to get the most out of my fast. So I tend to do that 16 and 8-hour, feed even when I'm training. So the results that I've actually gotten was 27 pounds in about 2.5 months.
Wow.
And I set like those PRs, like I said. I feel better getting up in the morning. I have more energy getting up. I digest my food way better. I get to sleep. I go to sleep tired, which is actually pretty good for me because you know me with my hectic schedule. I'm always constantly thinking and things like that. But I actually get to shut down pretty much when the night hits. So that means my circadian clock is on point right now. And it's functioning at its standard rate instead of being all mixed up and mashed up. So when I used to wake up and I used to wake up at nighttime because that's, you know, what strength coaches do. They get up, it's dark, and they go to bed, it's dark. So, but for me, my circadian clock was all off. So when I woke up, I was totally tired. I was drained. I would be forgetful with a lot of things. But seeing is that when I cut my food off around 7 or 8 o'clock, I'm fully digested, so I'm not tossing and turning while I go to sleep. I'm not getting up to go to the bathroom or anything like that. And I'm waking up leaner because I've already digested my food. My body is calm, and now I'm ready to hit that, you know, that high sympathetic state and jump into that growth hormone release in that morning.
So once your body adjusted, did you ever have times where past 8 or 7 that you did get hungry? Or, I mean, because your body adjusted, you just really didn't have that hunger because your body was used to maintaining that food for the next 16 hours for the next 8-hour eating period.
Yeah, so mine's a little different because, you know, obviously I've cut weight before. I've cut weight all my life pretty much. So I wasn't too worried about being hungry. And a lot of people don't really understand the true meaning of hunger. People think, oh, my stomach's growling, or they're bored, so they go to eat. But they don't really understand what it truly feels like to be hungry. If you ask some of those kids in Africa about how it feels to be hungry, they'll really tell you. So I think we got to get over that fact. I think it's a lot to do with the psychology of it, and really understand what it truly feels like to be hungry. But in all actuality, it probably will take you about 2 weeks to fully detox and get your body to a point where you can do that 16 hours. But I would say, you know, start off by doing a 12 on, 12 off, fasting type of approach, and then you can, you know, go in from there. I put up a post or a challenge recently, and it's gotten some good results. I think that people are starting to buy in and understand what I'm trying to do here is that I'm basically trying to redirect our circadian clock, making sure that we are digesting our food properly, but we're also utilizing our body fat for that fuel throughout the day, or at least in the morning times. Now, this goes with a number of different health benefits. We're talking, you know, metabolism. We're talking, like I said, growth hormone release, testosterone building, muscle building, fat burning. And this will stop any type of heart and cholesterol imbalances or conditions that you may have. So, I mean, not to get too far into the science of things, but it truly is something that is beneficial, especially here in America, but also around the world.
I mean, it's really fascinating. And what I love that you're giving here is not like just your personal experiences with it. You're giving research study, you know, facts and information. That's interesting too, because, you know, I was heavy most of my life, and I ended up losing, about 80 to 100 pounds because I did the 5 meals a day, but also I worked out. Well, and what's interesting about what you said with the mice is that, you know these are mice. They're not working out and keeping their body in that kind of, you know, situation. They're just living, and that they were still able to burn fat, and the other ones reacted differently. Is this the type of thing where are you open to, you know, people have different physiologies and whatever works for you, or are you a firm believer that this is probably a better way to go and it makes more sense, and you would even suggest it to your fighters and your clients?
Well, Dustin Poirier does do something similar to this, but we only do it in certain amount of times, and it depends on the schedule, right? So if he's training, primarily you want to make sure that you're recovering pretty optimally. So especially when you're training multiple times throughout the day. So it has to be monitored by either somebody has, you know, some type of background in this situation, a nutritionist, a dietitian, somebody like myself who's actually been doing this and doing the studies on it, and understanding the fighter in general. But I totally agree upon doing this for general population. This is something that this could be beneficial for them in numerous amounts of ways, you know, not having to really worry about eating every 2 or 3 hours. And that's constantly what I get when I used to ask people to make sure that they're eating, you know, constantly throughout the day to quote unquote speed up metabolism, which that in case I've done the research, I've seen the studies, and nothing really significant shows that you actually speed metabolism by eating every 2 hours. So, I mean, if you check the literature, there's not really definitive evidence on that. But, you know, from that aspect, I definitely believe General Pop will definitely, you know, benefit from this. And this could be a lifestyle change for them. A lot easier to manage, especially if you have, you know, a job and you have kids and you have lifestyles and things like that. When it comes to athletes, you know, it can be done. I think it's something that's good for a detox. I think it's something that's good for, like I said, all those health benefits, and even all those, you know, the performance benefits of the endurance and the growth hormone release. So it just has to be monitored and has to be calculated for their training.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Daru. Appreciate it. That's it. Now for our guest, he's the founder and director of programming for Mind Body One, where their goal is to fuse the concepts of psychology, fitness, and neuroscience to create a prosperous level of wellness. He's also an adjunct professor at Broward College, where he is surely passing on his wealth of knowledge in this cutting-edge area of the industry, combining cognitive exercise with strength training. He is Nicholas Davenport. Nicholas, thank you for coming on the show with this week. We really appreciate it.
Hey, no problem. I'm glad to be here.
All right, Nick. So let the people know exactly your background. I know you said a little bit about it, but just go ahead and give some details to let people know who you are, because they've seen you on the countdown now. They've seen you with Dustin Poirier. They've seen you doing crazy things with these fit lights. So let the people know, man, who is Nick Davenport?
Well, give you a little background. I was a former athlete myself. Me and Phil actually go way back to high school playing football. I went to college primarily for track and field, Division I. After my career ended, I wanted to stay in the field to some extent, so I got into strength conditioning. But then I furthered my education by getting a master's in sports psychology, and this is when I really started to say, I want to fuse the physical and the mental together. And that was about 2012. So since then, I've been working diligently to build a program that can do what I want to do. And Mind Body One finally came about 2016, when I finally was able to create something that made you have to think, move, and react all at the same time. So that's basically what led me up to this point.
Awesome, man. So, you know, we've worked together for a full camp with Dustin now. And what have you seen that the biggest aspects of what you do helped him in his fight last night?
Well, first and foremost, I saw his composure during the whole fight, because there's a lot of times I saw Pettis would try to counter some of his moves, but it wasn't working because he was able to just move with precision regardless of what angle he was put in. And the fit light training and all the other cognitive stuff we threw at him definitely helped prepare for him. Like, for example, there's one part when I saw his right eye kind of got a little bruised and swollen, and I remember we did that drill with the goggles, and basically we literally simulated that same scenario, and Phil had the noodles, had him parry and counter different attacks from all angles, so it was kind of cool to see how that literally directly carried over to him.
Yeah, I think that the fact that what you know, the knowledge base that you have and the knowledge base that I have from a sports-specific background on top of the physicality of it, but, you know, from a psychological standpoint, knowing what it is and how things happen in a fight and basically being able to put that together with our training and have that almost simulated in training, but to another degree, because we're throwing in so many different aspects, it just helped him stay focused and stay calm in there. And you could see it, and definitely was a great fight for Dustin too, by the way. But definitely great to have you on, man. I'm excited, and we're gonna keep it going.
Well, yeah, I can't wait to see what's next in store.
Now, Phil's put up many videos of, you know, you working with the ATT fighters, and like you mentioned before, you know, you were on Countdown. For a person like me that's a novice, and this, you know, the stuff you use and what you guys are doing is very unique, is interesting. In a way, some of the exercises look like a mix of almost like whack-a-mole and 80s game Simon, like blended into a serious and legitimate workout. When you first start to get your training methods out there, was there ever any apprehension from athletes who are used to more traditional techniques? Do you ever have to kind of persuade someone, say, look, you know, use this stuff, it's legit, it will work?
Oh, yeah, that's probably one of my biggest battles from several communities, because with athletes, they want to see tangible, like physical, real life results. And I think the beauty, what kind of got Dustin, some of the other fighters signed on, was the fact that I could give them measurable time saying, okay, you missed X amount of lights, or you did this in X amount of time. And it gives me digital live feedback right then and there. So I can say, hey, let's get it under 1 second. or let's get it under half a second. So they now say, okay, I understand that. If I get in there saying, okay, we want to work on some cognitive prefrontal training to make sure your impulse control is more or active or less inhibited, it's just going to sound like gibberish. But when I say, hey, get under this time, they say, okay, and they get under that time and we're good to go.
Was any of the equipment and technology used, was that any of it you kind of put together yourself, or was it just technology that was out there that just wasn't being used enough and you saw an opportunity to really, make more of it than it was at the time?
It's kind of a combination of both. Like the lights, that's probably the bread and butter of our training. We use a lot of different aspects, but the Fit Light system, they're called Fit Lights, and they've been around for about, I want to say, a few years. They got popular with basketball and baseball with like Steph Curry and other MLB players, and even Jeff Gordon, race car driving. But the way we approached it with Dustin, we added not just the physical reaction of it, but we also put in the thinking aspect. For example, I might say there'll be 4 or 5 different lights of different colors, and we have to do it in a specific order. So now he has to think while moving instead of just saying a light comes on, then deactivate it. We do some of that, but that's just like the base stuff. The goal is to make him have to react all over the place, whether it's left, right, up, down, 1, 2, 3, 4 numbers. We throw all kinds of stuff in there, so he's always thinking on the fly, and his peripheral vision's always being tested. And Phil even came up with the idea of throwing like tennis balls or medicine balls at him as he's doing that. So now he's got to react to external stimulus that makes him thrown off guard, which obviously we've seen in a fight can always happen, especially with a fighter who's like Pettis, who's always trying to get the inside edge with some unpredictable movements.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on your website, the mindbody1.com, it mentions your GMR group training classes for a person interested in attending those classes, which I believe are located in Boca Raton, Florida. What are some of the exercises that maybe you haven't already mentioned, but some of the other possible exercises a person can actually get involved in and do and make them even better athletes?
Well, the easiest way to do it, I guess, without the fancy equipment is just integrating some kind of thinking component while you're physically moving. For example, if you're doing say a goblet squat, because we never really want to do with something heavy like a barbell squat because you want to have your full attention there. But say something like a goblet squat, I'll be like, on every odd number, do a 3-second hold, or every even number, do a squat jump. You know what I'm saying? So now you're adding that thing aspect while physically exerting the force, which your brain working in conjunction. There's a lot of research behind when you multitask doing physical with the mental. It adds more development of your neurons and makes some stronger connections.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that we kind of integrated too with Dustin, where we got him physically exhausted and then have had him, think cognitively in a short duration and have him react to different stimuluses. So I think that was something that actually helped him stay focused. And we could see that in other fighters, especially when guys get hit or get rocked or get tired. They need to be able to think and still be technical. So I think that this is something that you can implement, but safe and effective at the same point.
Yeah. Phil, your next question, you have another, right?
Yeah. So, Nick, what I want to do is I want to basically start off by asking you what exactly what was your plan when you started with Dustin? Like when we started out, when I told you to come in and I wanted to start doing this with him, what was your plan? Did you have any expectations, or did you have like a set script that you were going to do? And how did that alter when you started working with them? And I know you changed a few things and you've added a few things. What was the baseline and what was your approach when starting with Dustin?
Oh, yeah. So when we first came together, I brought the lights and I talked about some different aspects. But as it developed, I think it's because my background not being as much in fighting, I'm a nerd. I love the research. So I started watching all kinds of fights from not just Dustin, but all different fighters, and started to learn, like, what can I do, not necessarily to simulate the fight, but to simulate the situations of pressure. And as the count went on, that's when we started adding the goggles. I started bringing the concentration grids, which for those who don't know, that's based like a word search with numbers. They're all scrambled up, and it doesn't require any physical activity, but it's very frustrating. Dustin would get frustrated, but eventually he got to the point that it wasn't bothering him anymore. Phil would throw a ball at him. I had the lights going. He would have the vision blurred, and he would have to do all kinds of mental processes without having to physically move his body. So as the count went on, we kind of shifted from both physical, but also the more stationary stuff to just have his mind to be able to react, period, regardless of the situation.
Yeah. And we ended up doing this primarily on like a Monday, where a day where he needed to have he needed to be physically capable of training throughout the week, because the next day was usually a hard sparring day. So we throw that in there more for mental capacity and being able to think and actually work his mind instead of his body. So we're not physically taxing him, but he's also still getting solid work in. So when he was sitting down and doing these like little puzzles, we throw everything at him from a psychological standpoint. I turned the paper over. I think Nick, we at one point, I think we were throwing the ball. We turned the paper over. We had him counting in threes, a bunch of shit, man. Stuff that were just really for me personally, I was like, shit, I don't even know if I can do this right now. You know what I'm saying? I was like, but you know, and to be honest, I was very impressed with the approaches that Nick brought in. And me, like I said, me and Nick do go way back. We played high school football together. Nick was always a brain. So, I mean, so I knew when I brought him in, it was going to be good. And I've been following his stuff since he started. So it was just good to bring him in and have him a part of American Top Team with my guys. Now we're working with, Santiago Ponzinibbio. We're also working with Marcia Casey. So we're getting these guys ready, man. And if they truly buy into the system, it's going to help them and they understand it. The problem is that some people, like we said, have that old school mentality where they don't really see the benefit of hitting lights, or they see the outer portion. They don't understand the root response that we're trying to accomplish here. But I think that more and more, once we start to see statistical data and the responses that we're getting with winning fights, and then obviously with the data that he has on his little laptop that he always brings over, it's going to help, man. It's going to show people that this is actually something that's beneficial for them, and something that's going to break the mold. And I've seen a couple of people try to do what we do now, but I don't think that they're on that level of specificity the way we do it. And when they do, it's kind of too specific to where they're taking away technical efficiency of different types of things. I'm not going to get too into detail, but I just don't want guys throwing punches at lights that aren't. And we talked about this, Nick. It's not beneficial for the fighter because it's taking them out of their technical efficiency or the way they actually throw a punch. But they can react, and it's still the same type of stimulus when you're reacting to a certain external stimulus. Is that correct, Nick?
Oh yeah, it's just like we said last week. We were talking about how if you being a strength coach, you getting someone strong and powerful doesn't make them a better fighter, but their fighting skills with that strength and power will allow them to be more proficient and carry over. And that same thing we're doing. Obviously, we're never going to react to a light or a puzzle in a fight, but the same brain waves that have to fire to tell you to react, turn this way, turn that way, stop, don't hit this, move this way, is the same process going to have in the fight. So that's why I tell, don't look at the face value, but more so the underlying factors that will carry over.
Yeah. From a fighter's perspective, you're learning how to react instead of guess. And that's one thing that's totally missing in some people's games is they're already it's almost like improv. Like you want to see what your opponent is doing and then react to what they're doing instead of already premeditating what you're going to do before you see the fight or see the opponent do something to react to. So we're talking about all reaction and no guessing, and that's something that can help with all sports, not just MMA, but specifically for combat sport athletes. I think it's vital. And we'll see how it goes from there.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, Phil mentioned the laptop you have. How has working with fighters at ATT helped your strategies and methods? Are you getting tons of new results by working with such high-level athletes? And has the experience made you make any changes to the techniques you already have?
Oh, yes, definitely. So basically, like you mentioned, I work at I'm an adjunct professor at Broward College. So with my classes, I kind of use my students because they love the different approach of training because I teach health and wellness and fitness. And I bring the lights, and I'll actually use them as kind of standardized data so I can compare them to the fighter so I can have a baseline to be like, okay, now we know what fast is. Because, for example, we do a drill called impulse control. It's pretty simple. We use 2 lights. Red is you don't hit, green you do hit. And when Dustin first started, he was at about 0.43 second average, so that's less than half a second reaction time. My class, we're doing like 0.5 high. Now we got him down to his fastest touch is 0.26 seconds, a quarter of a second. And this requires him moving his hand from his lap to about a foot in front of him, then back to his lap, and repeating that process over and over. So a quarter of a second. And it showed last night for sure. So this data I'm getting, it gives me a way to say, okay, what's working, what's not working. I do a little statistical analysis, say what correlates with what, so I can be like, okay, this is not really as needed, and I cut it out. Like, it's just with strength training. If it's not doing something that we need, why keep doing it? So I try to refine it every session.
Now, you also mentioned that you like doing research, you're a nerd, Phil calls you a brain. What was it about this specific spectrum of the strength and conditioning industry that really is cutting edge? A lot of people still don't understand and know about this. Yeah, what drew you to want to take part and building your brand around this?
Well, basically, being a former athlete, when I was in undergrad, I was a top-ranked long jumper in high school. But when I got to college, my mental game was not there. I had a lot of discouraging things with coaches, personal issues, and I just wasn't there. So when I graduated, like I said, I wanted to stay in the field. So when I learned about what sports psych was, I went to a small college called Bethune-Cookman University. We barely had a team, let alone anything advanced like, LSU's or Alabama's, like a sports psychologist. So when I found out what this was, I'm like, I love this subject. So I just delved into it. And it just told me, like, okay, there's something going on with the brain when we perform. And I knew this, but I didn't understand why. And not to get too technical, what basically happens with most people, whether they're elite athletes or amateurs, when you're under pressure, your brain shuts off the frontal lobe, which makes all the decision making. And it just says react to whatever happens. And like Phil was saying, in fighting, we can't have that. So basically what we're doing now is we're getting to the point so that frontal lobe stays activated, so they're not just using animal instinct, which obviously can help in a brutal fight, but sometimes that can backfire too. And I think Dustin showcased very well that even though he was brawling, he kept his composure that whole time. And I'm not trying to throw shots at Pez, but I think he kind of lost his composure a little bit, and it got to him. So there's a physical aspect of that mental game. So it's not just all the brain, but it's the body connection, and that's what we base our business off of.
Now, you mentioned before all the football and the track field related stuff. Did you always, was your goal to eventually move into those professionally, or did you always kind of foresee you might get into this particular business down the line anyway?
Well, I guess that was always a goal, because every young kid, there's 2 million different athletes in elementary to high school that's saying, I want to be in the NFL. We know the statistics. Mm-hmm. It ain't going to happen for probably 1,999,000 of them. So basically I said, if it don't, because like I said, Phil, we're at one of the top ranked schools in America, not just Florida. And we were some of the top in Broward. He played in the All-Star games. I got invited to a lot of big camps. So we were good athletes. So we had the potential, but I told myself at some point this may end whether or not I make it. And I prepped myself. If it did come to an end, I knew what I wanted to do before it got to that point. And most athletes don't get that. And unfortunately, they say an athlete dies twice. So I had to be ready for that first funeral,
Mm-hmm. That's cool, man. So let's segment back into, like, you going to Bethune and knowing, like, obviously you ran track and things like that. You're an athlete. But what exactly skewed you to going into that sports psychology realm and actually pursuing this as something as your full-time gig?
Well, basically, that's my personality of going against the grain. So when I graduated from Bethune, my undergrad was in psychology first, and I wanted to stay in psychology, so I didn't know where to go. I just said, no, I'll be a therapist. So I started taking classes at Barry University in Miami, and I was like, this is boring. So I had a classmate. She told me that she had her master's in sports psych, and I'm like, what's that? So I enrolled in that program, like, without even thinking, because I'm very impulsive. Despite what I teach, I'm impulsive on a lot of things. So I jumped right into it, and I loved it, and it worked out. So basically, it was just a matter of me going against the grain, because she said there's no money there. And I'm the type of person, as you know, it's not all about the money. If I can do something I love and, get paid from me, that's where I want to be. And that's basically what led me down the path.
Gotcha.
All right, I mean, that's pretty much all the questions we have now. Is there anything in terms of social media? I mean, we mentioned mindbody1.com, social media, Twitter, that's Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, anywhere people can start to follow you so they can further understand this amazing, progressive, interesting work that you're doing, so they can go and see what else you're doing?
Oh, yeah. So on pretty much all social media, is my personal, myself, is under Mr. Mental Muscle. That's on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And then the company is at The MindBody1, TheMindBody1. So that's all the social medias for the business and my personal, which you can see all this different stuff and me going deeper, explaining a little better, and they can see all the videos we do.
All right, Phil, as always, give me your social.
Yeah, so one thing I also want to say is that me and Nick are actually looking into doing some seminars with both MMA strength and conditioning and the sports psychology of cognitive conditioning. So if you are interested, anybody, if you own a gym, if you work with fighters, if you're interested in us coming out there and actually teaching some of these routines and these techniques, hit us up. You can hit me up at phil@DarulStrong.com on email or any type of social media. Daru Strong on Instagram, Daru Strong on Twitter, and you can also follow all my videos again on Snapchat, Daru Strong 1.
All right, for me, you can find me on Instagram at Jericho Vendetta and Twitter, Cheap Seats Chat. Now, always remember, you have to find us on Facebook, Fight Strength Podcast, and on Twitter, Fight Strength _. Thank you so much, Nicholas. Really appreciate it. I'm fascinated by the work you do and you're doing with Phil, and just thank you so much for coming on the show with us this week.
Thank you for having me on, and thanks, Phil, for bringing me into this world, because it seems like it's only going up from here. So I appreciate it, both of y'all.
Yep, plenty more to come, brother.
All right, that is our show for this week. I am Jason Burgos. He was Nicholas Davenport, and of course, bearded wonder Phil Daru. Talk to you next time, everybody. Bye-bye.